Hey everybody, I'm Sean Robinson.
I'm Brandon Graham.
Welcome to Living the Line, and today we're going to do another comic show and tell. Brandon, you, I believe, showed the last time, so I think it's my turn if we're going by playground rules here. Uh,
It's always a way to do it.
I wanted to show you a little bit about Kawashima Norikazu. Because this week, the week that we're recording this, I don't know when this will go up, but the week that we're recording this, his first book in English just came out,
Oh,
courtesy of
fantastic.
the new Living the Line imprint Smudge. So, uh, uh, Kawashima is his family name. Norikazu is his first name,
Is that
and
logo by you?
it is by me. Yeah. I was really adamant that this had to have a true classic horror logo.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not actually much of a letterer,
I like
but
it.
I sat down. This is like last summer, and I had a big brush pen, and I did this giant like 15 times, uh, and then compiled it from like the last three
That's what
that I
I asked,
did.
is if you got it in one, because I do that a lot where I'll oftentimes for my logos, if I have a repeat letter, I'll just draw it once and be like, that's going, that's getting photoshopped.
Yeah, no, it was pretty close to being the last one that I did. And then I think I dropped three letters in from one of the other ones. And, just did it with big brush pen. Try to do it like, sign painter style, one stroke for each letter segment, everything. But yeah, so this is our book. As the first book in English by Kawashima Norikazu, a very interesting horror manga artist who primarily worked from 1982 to 1986 for a company called Hibari Shoten. Hibari had a line of comics called Hibari Hit Comics, and these are fairly small horror manga that turns out where many of them were targeted at young girls. And this is prior to serialization really taking off for horror exclusive comics. There had been horror magazines before that of various kinds, but the real big wave of like people would consider modern horror manga, Junji Ito and things like that, started in 86 around that time. So um, as there's this surge in serialization, these guys who were doing one-off books like this, fell out of prominence, and so he was a superstar for that label of comics. His stuff was popular. You can tell it's popular because they reprinted it all the time. So they'd get this guy to do a new cover,
Nice.
they'd slap a new title on there, and then you got a new book, right? Um,
Right. My understanding, were these released in a way where they were often like rentals almost?
yeah, no, this is not. That would be like a Kashihan book, a Kashihan rental market. No, this was not targeted at a rental market. These were actually, sold. I don't know. I don't know what the placement was. I think it was bookstores and things like that. But they're smaller format than you might expect.
Those like
Uh,
teenage girls that are looking to be terrified.
right. That's the Habari hit comics formula. Is a teenage girl who's terrified of a giant monster behind her.
I like the little Hibari hit comics at the top.
Yeah, they all had the exact same formatting, so you always knew exactly what you were going to get. And I'll have a cover painting and then a back cover painting. And believe it or not, lots of them had. Let me see if I can find an example here. Lots of them had letters from fans who read previous books from that artist inside of the new one. So here's
Interesting.
a letter from the fan, and here's a photo of herself that she sent in. Uh,
That's so
and
cool.
these cool little dust jackets with a little line art
Nice.
on the interior. So her
Is there much
Frankenstein.
about these that makes you feel in the stories of like her Frankenstein that it is geared towards women?
So that's a really good question. Yeah, people who have read her Frankenstein already are going to be scratching their heads uh, about this because I would say It's kind of hard to tell. The guy's Kawashima Norikazu is not alive anymore. He died in, I believe, in 2008. So we can't ask him about it, but it seems to be a more personal story than maybe some of the ones that are hew a little bit closer to the formula. At least if you can use the fact that it doesn't hew to the formula. So for one, the protagonist and in her Frankenstein is a man. For two, it has a lot of maybe less traditional in the sense that the story itself is not focused purely on the supernatural events, but has like a psychological bent to it. And it
Because there's an element of basically like a man, like a teenage boy lusting after a woman who's like manipulating him. Is that correct?
that's a fair encapsulation of a good chunk of the story. Yeah.
So that sounds like something that a teenage girl could find. And also, I want to point out, like American women are famously obsessed with serial killers.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. Like, reading these. I say reading. Obviously, I don't read Japanese. These are all translated by, all the Smudge books are going to be translated by Ryan Holmberg, who is also the editor and sets up all these things. But reading these, such as someone can read something in a language that they don't know, you do get an idea for things that are very kind of popular in the psyche of the people who are reading these, clearly because they were successful, but that you wouldn't necessarily expect. It kind of feels similar to when Twilight was really popular. You had to kind of have this massive amount of reckoning of people who are like, okay, well, apparently there's a lot of middle school girls who really like the idea of a blood-sucking leech who totally controls them and has a werewolf friend who's going to imprint on their daughter.
Right. I've heard the theory a little bit about how the two or at least this YouTube take it for what it's worth. A guy on YouTube was talking about how oftentimes women will be attracted to kind of status and position, which is often associated with age, and then like handsome tiger beat beauty. So if you combine those in an Edward Cullen and you get an older guy with status who also looks like a tiger beat cover model, it's like this combination that is not found in reality. That's the two types that women go for. So, and there's that thing of so a friend of mine was talking the other day about how a lot of our things that excite us are going from the line of like what's comfortable and what we like, kind of approaching what is something we very much don't like and is uncomfortable to us. But if we kind of edge a little closer to that,
Yeah.
and I think the teenage boy version is probably just like WrestleMania and pulling heads and beating people with their spine and everything,
Right.
and for women it's just like let's dance a little closer to the terror of serial killers and
Right.
yeah. So that's my
Well,
take on the appeal of this stuff.
he seemed to be pretty in tune with his market, and like I said, he was clearly one of the most popular Hibari artists, or maybe he just really made a swing at it. He drew 29 books
Oh wow.
by himself, each one 180 pages. As far as I know, he didn't have any assistants or anything like that, and he did
Are
that.
those all self-contained one shots essentially?
Yes, they're all self-contained. Yeah, uh, from 1982 to 1980. Maybe his last one came out in 87. His last book was actually the last Hibari book.
Oh.
So they went out with him. I thought this was a cute little self-portrait of him reading the fan mail and smoking a cigarette
Oh nice.
in the inside of this one here. I guess this girl didn't send her photo to be reproduced with the letter.
While
So
smoking like a chimney, he just like pleasantly read it. Do you have a copy of the original Japanese of her Frankenstein there?
no, I don't, because it's ridiculously rare for a book that was printed so many copies of. And it just is way too expensive on the collector's market. I would probably would have bought one anyway, even though it would have cost a ridiculous amount of money. But Believe it or not, at least with the auction sites searching that I did, I didn't see a single copy come up the entire time that we were working on this book until a couple weeks ago. It was like
Oh, wow.
2 or 3 weeks ago, one came up for sale.
Does the Japanese edition have a different cover than the one you used on the Living Line?
It does, and it's actually reproduced in the essay in the back. Um, so it's this gnarly thing here,
Oh, wow.
which is awesome. Uh,
Fascinating.
yeah, so a nice little painting here. We used that image on the back cover.
Nice.
But yeah, for various reasons, we didn't use the original cover. For one, is almost all the books that we're going to be doing in this line are historic titles and are rare historic titles.
Hmm.
And so I think it's going to be very, very unlikely that we're ever going to be working from original art
Sure.
for this. So as soon as you start working from print sources for full color images, you have to descreen them. If you're already descreening them, then it's not necessarily going to look good to blow it up. So you imagine that you're already descreening an image and then you're going to have to make it this size, uh, much larger than it was printed originally. You get into all these kind of like practical entanglements. The other thing is that the design might be copyright the original publisher
Oh,
as
interesting.
as opposed to the body of the work, which is under most cases copyright the estate of the artist.
That makes sense. And there's a certain thing about the design aesthetic that you did that even though it's a woman with her face covered in blood, it kind of softens it and makes it like it's presented more just like, look at this classic piece of Japanese literature. Yeah.
Yeah, um, it'll be interesting to see, see how the design aesthetic develops over the entirety of the thing. But we're really, really picky about like the paper and you know um, the, that it felt really right. So we want it to feel like familiar to a manga reader, but we also want it to be like a higher cut, a cut above in terms of the quality and everything. So, for instance, like, even though it's a soft cover, it's actually sewn binding on the book. So rather than grind down the signatures, they're sewn, which means you can easily open it, much wider than you can a standard book that was produced that way.
Certainly. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And I think that's a nice thing to point out to people that haven't seen Live in Line books is how just physically better they feel than your standard comic book.
well,
And
thanks.
especially manga where a lot of things are just printed as cheaply as possible. But then I guess you have the higher end kind of biz books as well that are also like I
Right.
was thinking when we're talking about the design of her Frankenstein cover of like the Tezuka books that they put out, these very artful designed covers. And you think about in Japan, they probably just had like a dog's head coming off an explosion.
Yeah, well, it's weird. Like I feel like the more that digital kind of takes over, the more you are obligated as a publisher and a designer to make something that makes an argument for print. So it is a different experience reading a book than it is to look at an image on a screen. And so everything you can do to sort of improve the print experience and show how much better it can be, the better off that you are. You know, you you want to make the medium itself, part of the argument for the medium. And people who sort of cut corners on those aspects, I mean, I think that it doesn't do a service to people who love print medium.
Certainly, yeah. Yeah. And especially when you're reading something pre-made pre-internet, it even adds the experience of like this was not intended to read on a screen.
Right. No, certainly not. They wouldn't have used screen tone. He wouldn't have used a bunch of really tight hatching, all types of things that like, you just wouldn't draw that way. If he was drawing today, he'd be drawing on Instagram. He'd be doing everything full color probably. I mean, it would be like suited for a screen. Um,
Yeah, certainly. And oh, we should talk about like where can people get this now?
Oh, I mean anywhere. So yeah, this is came out in pre-order. I started shipping these out like maybe a little less than 2 weeks ago, and they came out in comic stores this week. That we're filming this. Came out the 15th of May, and it'll be in bookstores in another 8 days or so. So pretty much anywhere you want to get it. And then the printer just sent me a fold and gathered like copy of UFO Mushroom Invasion. This is a just a confirmed placement. This is basically like a laser printer copy of the book. This is going to be the second Smudge book,
Yeah, I love the
and
cover on that one.
yeah, it's, pretty happy with it.
Look
Uh,
at this nightmare fuel that you can have by your bedside table.
Makes me kind of want to do like the metal horns every time I look at it. Um, but yeah, that is a wild book as well. So we're in the process of figuring out what the lineup is going to look like for the next like year and a half right now with these. And you know, any excuse that I have to find an artist as amazing as Kawashima Norikazu, and you know, buy buy a bunch of his books in a language that I can't read, you know, I'm going to take that excuse.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like the people that are watching this channel are probably can relate to buying things because they're weird and unreadable.
Right. Um, if I did it, if I ever did a camera pan over to that part of my office that I'm pointing to over here, it would basically ruin all of our surprise plans for Smudge because I've got, you know, 40 books over there.
Oh, nice! You've got all of your red string tying different manga together.
Exactly right. Yeah. And if we do this, then we can do this and we do that. Yeah. So, you know, big plans and all that, right? Um, we very optimistically labeled this Smudge 001 because we're going to need all three of those digits. Uh,
Yeah, well, there's no shortage of incredibly bizarre. On one of these show and tell things, I have to bring up. I have this manga over here called Lovely Monroe, which is just a World War II anthropomorphic pig prostitution comic, and it's like 10 volumes. I had a friend of mine roughly translate it for me. It might as well be wordless. It's almost all screaming. Might be an easy translation job, but I mean, but just that,
yeah.
like if I showed a page of that to someone and was like, "This is how many copies of this do you think were made?" You know, it's a thing that feels almost like insane. Like I couldn't bring that to an American publisher and be like, "It's a World War II pig prostitute. Yes, it has penetrative sex in it." Like they would be like, "Leave, never come back." In Japan, somehow they managed that. The hero in it is kind of a cool leather jacket wearing pig that smokes cigarettes and wears sunglasses.
You know, we've talked a little bit about this before with like the Appleseed and, you know, our early sort of efforts to like find stuff to transliterate that was genre copacetic with existing American comic scene.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I I think we're kind of entering a new phase now where it's like, what is it that has we just never even imagined? You know, what is it that has been sort of hidden? And you know, it's back to genre, right? There's these genres that, for whatever reason, just have never had the same cachet in America that have been neglected. You know.
Yeah, well, my hope is that it will breaks the we're entering this interesting phase in the American comic market, I think, where we've been kind of restrained in a lot of ways for so long, and now that manga is such a big influence, and I think that that could be kind of a negative because so much of it's this really formulaic shonen manga. But I think that uh, my hope is that it breaks the American market where people suddenly realize that they can do weird comics about anything and that people just want weird things. And it's less people being like, what's my superhero idea? And more like, what's the weirdest idea I can possibly imagine? You know, and hopefully Living Line is there to be like, send us you're tired, you're poor, you're dog-headed prostitutes yearning to be free.
Exactly. Well, definitely pick up a copy of Her Frankenstein, and special shout out to everybody who made this book happen, including obviously Ryan Holmberg, translator, editor, licensor, as well as Kawakatsu Tokushige, who wrote the amazing essay in the back. He's a great cartoonist in his own right, and works for Magazine House, the people who went and found this and were able to get the Japanese license to reprint this 2 years ago. And also Midori no uh, Gosunkugi, I apologize, who is the collector who allowed his copy to be photographed for this, and also wrote the essay in the back that has basically like a best of Kawashima Norikazu that talks about a lot of the different things, which I think to a lot of people that's going to be the best part of the book. Like even better than the awesome book is like reading the synopses and seeing the covers of these, really, really wild other books that he made.
Oh, certainly.
Um,
I'm
anyway,
excited to see that one.
cool. Well, thanks for showing and telling with us.
Back to the land, let's get away, just for one day. Let me see you stripped down to the bone. Let me see you stripped down to the